Are we streaming?
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming. I really appreciate it. I'm using the microphone because we're streaming to Facebook, and so everything that's being said is easily picked up on Facebook, because I absolutely hate when you're trying to listen to a video and you can't quite hear it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about who I am and why I want to be your mayor. And we have a microphone at the center of the table that is on the candy. So please have some candy. And if you want, when you want to ask questions, if you could just ask someone to hand you the mic so that everybody online will be able to hear very well what you have to say. So I'm Angel Castillo. I am an Ogden City Planning Commissioner, and my day job is a marketing consultant. And as a marketing consultant, everything is about communication as far as I'm concerned. I get hired to go into companies that sales are flat, or they want to launch a new product, or they want to tweak an old product. And the first thing that I do is I come in and I start talking to every single person that works at that company, from the janitor to the secretary to the cleaning lady to the middle management to the manufacturing people. Because in order to fully understand a process, you have to be engaged with the identity of the company, and you need to figure out what people have to say. I can't tell you how many times I've heard the phrase, well, that's the way we've always done it. And my answer to that is, and how's that working out for you? Not so good. So talking to people that normally don't have a voice in the process is usually where I find the gold when I'm working at a company. It's a manufacturing manager that has had a job for 20 years and nobody listens to him. But he has that insight, that boots on the ground experience of, well, if we did this and this, I could turn this widget out in 10 minutes faster and we could increase productivity. But management doesn't want that because they like their process. So I'm a problem solver, and I'm creative in figuring out how to reach a particular audience for a product. And the reason I'm on the Planning Commission is because I fell head over heels in love with Ogden when I came here in 2014 for the USA Masters National Cycling Race. I got here, and it's like, why don't I live here? This is an amazing place. We have epic trails, beautiful, more open space than I've ever seen in any other town, and really friendly, warm people. Most people, when 2,000 racers descend on a town and make their lines to restaurants, take an hour. They're usually a little upset. But I had people that I was talking to that were like, oh, where are you from? When's your race? What color's your jersey? We'll cheer for you. And I swear, I had people, total strangers, show up that I had met at restaurants that were like screaming for me while I was racing. That's the kind of town that I want to be a part of. That's the community that I've been missing in a bigger city. Plus all of the amazing trails and mountains. I never knew I could be emotional about mountains until I had. And the Planning Commission portion of it is coming from a place that has been poorly managed with regards to population growth and homelessness crisis. I don't want to see that here. I want to grow old and die here, and I want to make sure that we don't make the same mistakes that other cities have made all across the nation, because we're not a big city, but we're not a little town anymore. We are, if you talk to planners, that magic number is right at about 100,000. That's when it really starts to get growing, and we're just under 90. We're hurtling towards that.
We used to be 100 though. We lost population.
Well, it's coming back. And the whole thing with growth in Utah, I'm sure you've heard all the stats, by the time we hit 2050, Utah is going to have 5 million people. Utah is growing at the rate of one bountiful a day, or a year. That's 144,000 people. And with that growth that we have to make sure we're looking at our infrastructure, and we have to look at where are people going to live? Where are they going to work? Where are they going to live? How are we going to move them? And planners are the unsung hero, and planning commissioners are just people from the community trying to make sure that the voice is represented for the people that are in that community, and that development retains character. That is my number one fear. Is I don't want to be Draper. I want to be Ogden. I want to have cool shops on 25th Street that are small indie businesses, wonderful startup restaurants. I want to have beautiful, architecturally significant buildings. nothing, not to diss Draper. Draper's a very nice town, but that's not why I moved to Ogden. I moved to Ogden because we have heart, we have soul, we have grit, we have this entrepreneurial spirit, and I really dig all the people that take their dream and put it out there. Lavender Vinyl, that's a great little store on 25th, and Lavender Bakery, and coffee shops like Grounds for Coffee on Harrison and on 25th, which is where we are. Hi, we're on Harrison. I want to make sure that we keep what we have that's special. That's why my slogan is preserve what we have, plan for what we need. I want to make sure we retain our identity. And I've been serving this community since I got here. I moved here on a Saturday. We unpacked the trailer, and on Tuesday I was at a city council meeting because I want to be connected. And I was on the planning commission within 30 days because I want to be connected. I'm a board member at YCC. I'm a board member at Roads to Recovery. I'm on the Ogden Civic Action Network Housing Committee. That's that project that Weber is doing to end intergenerational poverty. And I'm on a whole bunch of other committees that are just voices. Like I was on the Arts Creatives District Steering Committee. So I'm all in, you know. And every now and then I hear people say, "Well, you're an outsider." I've had both feet in the pool since I got here, and I have been serving for just under 2 years. And being mayor will allow me to serve in a larger capacity and to be actually able to move some things through with how we're growing. One of my big issues is housing affordability for our workforce. We are a blue-collar town. Our median income is $43,000. 50%, just under 50% of people that live in Ogden are renters, okay? And while they may not ever be homeowners, some people don't want to be homeowners, some people want to just rent an apartment and not worry about things and do a lot of travel. We need to make sure that the people who make $43,000 or less can afford to rent here. They grew up here. They should be able to stay here. And right now, the average rent for a one-bedroom is $917. Two-bedroom, it's just over $1,000, and that's a mortgage payment. and I want to make sure that we have places that people can live and afford to move up the chain. This is a true story. I asked a coffee barista, what do you want to see for Ogden? I ask everybody that question. If I gave you a magic wand and you could wave it and fix one thing, what would it be? Well, that particular barista said, I don't know. So I gave her my card, and here's my number. Call me, text me, email me. I want to know what you have to say. It's important to me. I'm actually tracking all this stuff on a spreadsheet because I'm a data geek. So I have a list of what's important to everybody. So this particular person wrote me a letter that just about broke my heart. This particular person had a really rough upbringing and left at a young teenage age and has been paying taxes and working since being a teenager. This person wants to knows what they want to do. They want to be a vet. They want to go to school and they want to be a vet. And the email starts off about her rough background and that she's had a tough time, but it's happening. And that what can you do about everything being so expensive? I know that's not maybe a mayor problem. Can you do anything about it? Because I want to go to school and I can't go to school because it costs so much to live. I can't save, and yet I make too much to receive federal assistance to get schooling. So there's a happy ending to this story. This particular person, I've set them up with a wonderful organization called PEO, which does scholarships and grants, and I know Brad Mortensen. And I talked to Brad Mortensen, who is the president of Weaver, and he goes, this person, you call this person, and this person will hold your contact's hand and walk them through the process and make sure that they get everything that they need. Because it's really complicated to apply to university. There's lots and lots of steps to go through, and a lot of people get discouraged, but I want to make sure somebody who is working and contributing to our community can afford to live here and afford to move themselves along to different opportunities to go to school and have a degreed job, or go to tech school, or start your own business. Whatever that dream is, if you're spending more than 50% of your income on rent, it's going to be impossible to do those things. And a mayor can fix that. I have not shut up about something called inclusionary zoning since the beginning of this year. You'll hear me talk about it at just about every city council meeting, and I've sent the city council members information about what is inclusionary zoning. Now, this is an overly simplified explanation, but a big developer comes along, wants to build a building, 10 units or more, then that developer has to offer 20 to 25% of those units at below market rate. And there's this wonderful complex formula that everybody uses based on median income, and that's something for the MBAs to handle because it's different from city to city. But what they do is they pick a number that works for people who make $13,000 and less. That's low income. And then they pick a number of what you can pay for rent if you're making $43,000 or less. And then the rest of the building, the other 80% or 75% of the building, is market rate housing. The developer charges whatever the developer wants. And that will move forward in perpetuity until the building no longer exists. So even as things are getting more and more expensive, there's always going to be this pressure release valve of low income, middle income housing available for our students to rent. For a single mom who just got divorced that doesn't have a really big income because she's trying to get back on her feet. We want to make sure that those people that are part of our community, that work at our coffee shops, that work at Costco, that go to school, that graduate Weber with 2 degrees and are on a starting salary of $36,000, have a place to live and can stay in Ogden if they grew up here in Ogden. So that's a big thing for me, which ties into why I'm a member of the Planning Commission, because I see that we can lay the groundwork here by updating our general plan to put these things in place. There is no magic bullet for housing, there is no magic bullet for homelessness, but there are pressure release valves that a city can put into place to keep it from becoming a crisis. And that's one of the top things on my list that I want to do. And the other thing that I want to do is we need to figure out how to retain our experienced police officers. And that is equaling money. We're paying significantly less than the entire state is paying. And we lose officers at an alarming rate to Salt Lake City and Salt Lake County because we essentially pay $10 an hour less. And I see this as a problem, because we want to make sure we have senior officers to be paired with junior officers so that the senior officer can show those de-escalation skills. And I want to live in a town where a nurse can come home from McKay at 1 o'clock in the morning and go for a jog and feel like she's safe. I want to live in a community where you can have some teenagers hanging out in the yard or walking around the block to go grab a soda and feel okay as a parent that nothing's going to happen. Nobody wants gangbangers in their community. Nobody wants a drug house in their community. And the only way that you can remove those things from a community is to have senior officers that know what they're doing. And another reason that we want to keep those seasoned officers is that we have areas in our community that really need connection to the police force. They really need to be heard and understand what's needed, and we're operating at 80% capacity. I've spoken with several community groups, and they want foot patrols, and I get that. You want foot patrols so that you know that's Officer Bob, and I have Officer Bob's phone number, and if there's some things going down, I can text Officer Bob, and Officer Bob is going to take care of it for me. Well, when you're understaffed, you can't do that because all you're doing is drive-bys in a car, rolling down the window going, hey, how's everything going? It makes me feel uncomfortable. It's like, what are you looking at me for? But if Officer Bob was walking up to me and said, hey, how's it going? That's a whole different experience. And so if we can increase our officers so we're operating at 100% capacity and we have the money to keep them here, we can start to build those bridges between communities that need those officers the most and have those relationships put into place so that there is connection. And I also want to have bias training, regular bias training for our police force, and it's not going to cost the city a dime. The NAACP offers free mediation services. They have trained professionals that do nothing but go to groups and help build those bridges to make sure that we understand each other as a community, make sure that we're using words that are not inflammatory, and we have to go through that process of building trust. again. And that's not going to happen without somebody completely neutral from the outside sitting down going, okay, let's talk about it. So that's an important thing to me. And we need to look at infrastructure. Infrastructure, sidewalks, potholes. I'm sure everybody here has a sidewalk, curb, pothole story. Part of the reason that we have those issues is because we are not fiscally sustainable as a city. We have, for the last 15 years, not been putting aside enough money to repair our roads as they start to deteriorate. It's like any piece of machinery, there is going to be some, it's going to start to degrade after a particular amount of time, and you're going to have to replace it and not just patch it. I don't know about any of you, if you signed up for the water alerts from the city. I get one at least every 10 days that says 23rd to this street, there's going to be water is off because we're repairing a pipe. Those pipes are over 80 years old. They're going to need to be replaced. And what's happening is that the current administration is funneling a ton of money into business development, but not business development like we're going to help this company get set up. We're buying commercial property. We own the Hostess Site Factory. We own the Swift building. I'm sure you've all heard about that. We also own the Rite Aid. And the Rite Aid's been sitting empty for 10 years. Nothing's going on there, but we took out a loan and we own that property and we're paying on a bond. And last year, we spent $15.9 million in the redevelopment agency. And this year, we'll spend $17.9. Now, I'm not saying completely do away with the redevelopment agency because it's an essential part of how we do business. And one of the things that we really need to be doing is more of the Own in Ogden program, where the city buys these really rundown homes and then works with a contractor, fixes them up, and then people that we want in a community, nurses, teachers, fire, police, those communities have first crack, and then it goes to open market. We only did 6 of those last year.
Wow.
$15.9 million was spent and we only did 6 on in Ogden. So I say we scale all of that back. I say we have a working list of things that are important to people, and I say we involve the community in those decisions, because it may not be the most popular thing to say, but as a budget goes, not everybody gets a pony. You're going to have to figure out what are the most important things to you, and let's develop a 5-year plan of how we're going to pick apart at them and how we're going to look at them. Signing into law inclusionary zoning, that's a minimal investment. We already had Salt Lake City signed inclusionary zoning into law. There's already a relative template for Utah. Our lawyers won't take that much to do that. Small expense, but for the long run, it's what's best for Ogden. With regards to our police department, in order to give a 2% raise, it takes $1 million because you have to pay into pensions. So in order to raise up our salary or at least get it close enough to Salt Lake City, $5 million. RDA budget, 15.9, and I need $5 million. I think there's a lot of things that we are spending as a city that we just need to be spending smarter. We need to streamline. We need to get some outside help from people who consult for towns and cities all across the nation to help become fiscally sustainable. We have got to get on track with, these are our priorities, here's how we're going to move towards them, and we need to connect to the city. The citizens in the city haven't had a connection with the administration. Mayor Caldwell has not held a town hall in 8 years. What does that tell you about how he values your voice? This will be my 8th since I started running, and I started doing these, I think, in June. So, again, I'm all about communication. I'm all about collaborative leadership relationships. I want to make sure when we make decisions that they are made with the people in the community that they're going to impact the most. If we're doing things in East Central, we need to have people from East Central at the table. We need community leaders to be weighing in on the direction that we're going, and especially when it comes to we want to work with the officers to bring crime down. those officers have to know and trust the community leaders, and the only way that we're going to get that trust is we're going to facilitate it, and we're going to make sure that we provide a safe space with a mediator for our officers to sit down and get connected to the communities that they serve. And being fully staffed is an important thing. Right now, there are no officers that are regularly assigned to an area of beat. They're always moving all around, and it's because we're short. We're short when people get sick. We're short when people go on vacation. And if we were 100% fully staffed, we could charge a particular group of officers, this is your beat. This is your neighborhood. These are your people. Get to know them. And then they can swap out in between. So at least there's a constant. But again, coming back to communication, essential. We need to start connecting to the community, asking what the community wants and needs, and then taking that advice and listening and making sure that those community leaders are an involved part of our decision process, because this is a position of service. You don't get into politics or serving on a planning commission because it makes you a lot of money. You do it because you want to serve. And that's where I want to be as a mayor. I want to be highly communicative. I want to hold a town hall every single quarter where I'm going to sit in a room and you can tell me everything you want to tell me. And then we're going to know. Because how else are we going to know if we don't have that conversation? And I want to be transparent. I want to, this whole thing that just happened with the Swift building, I'm a little upset about that. At the city council meeting that I went to last night, they're saying, well, it was a dangerous property and we bought that property and we're handling it. I'm not exactly okay with spending $400,000 on a property that you know has toxic waste. I say you step back and you report it to the EPA, and you don't purchase that building and then you let the EPA take those people to court to sue them to make sure that it gets cleaned up, because the EPA will act on a known toxic site if they know it exists. We knew it existed and yet we still bought it. Now, maybe if we had a huge gold pot that has extra reserve money, that would be okay, but we don't, because everybody tells me the constant narrative I hear when I stand up in city council and I talk about we need to raise our police officers. Mayor Caldwell's response is every single time, we talk about this every day. This is important. I want to make sure there's a quote in the last couple articles in the Standard where he wants to make sure that the narrative is that we're working on it. Well, you've been working on it for 8 years. 8 years. You can hope that something is going to do what you want it to do, or you can move into solution. And I'm more of a solutions person. I'm more of, let's figure out how we're going to do this and let's become fiscally responsible. So I want to ask some questions or want to answer some questions. We have a microphone in the middle of the table, and I would love if we could just pass it around and you can ask me any question. We need the microphone so that the people on Facebook can hear what you're saying.
Is it on? Okay.
Yep, you're good.
I have a question for you. It's great that you're on the planning commission because I have a lot of planning questions for you.
Okay.
I will not hog, but I just want to ask a couple. So you moved to this town 5 years ago and you fell in love with it because 2 years ago.
I came here earlier to race the nationals, and I just wouldn't shut up about it until we got here.
So you got emotional about our mountains.
Uh-huh.
So those of us who grew up here, who have been here a long time, love those mountains. And so one of the things I'm concerned about is continued public access to those mountains.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to see gated communities blocking off public access to anyone to those mountains.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to see houses built to the top of that mountain. So I just would love to hear your ideas about, because you're talking about inclusionary planning and all that kind of stuff. What do you think about just those things I just said?
Okay, well, that's a great concern, and I'm right there with you. I believe that those mountains are a gift for everyone to be enjoyed, regardless of how much money they make. And I am not a fan of gated communities if you're going to be blocking off something that is a public right-of-way to enjoyment. I give money to Weaver Pathways every single year, and it's important to me. Those trails bring people so much peace to take your kids, to take your grandma, to just go out there and be in nature, and that's what Utah's all about. So when I say inclusionary zoning, I think, and thank you for asking this, I'm not talking about inclusionary zoning everywhere. I'm talking about higher density along transit line. That's downtown. That is the #1 priority, and we're the BRT line is being expanded by UTA because they've seen that we're going to grow, and so they're ready to put the billions of dollars into the infrastructure. And they want us to put mixed-use commercial along the transit line because it just makes sense. It gets people out of cars, gets them taking public transportation. And let me tell you a story about the Planning Commission that absolutely made me lose my mind. When I first came to the Planning Commission, there were 7 properties that were along a high-density transit line next to a bus stop, just a stone's throw from the front runner. There were 7 properties that were near public access for transit that didn't have houses on them. They were set to be mixed-use commercial. They were at least an acre or more and buildable. 7 of those. And 6 or 7 months ago, a Quick Quack car wash wanted to buy one of those, put in a car wash on the corner. It's right next to fire station number 4, across the street from Lowe's. Walmart's on the other side, but that's not Ogden. It's right there. And I lost my mind. I lost my damn mind on this one. I was quite vocal in council because to me, putting a car-oriented destination, that's the only thing that's ever going to go there is you drive there, you drive out in 100 feet from a bus stop. That just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. And as a planner, what you'll find out is that once a business goes in, its usage is probably never going to change. And if it's going to change, it's going to take at least 10 or 15 years. So once Quick Quack Car Wash is there, they're not going anywhere unless that company files for bankruptcy, which I find highly unlikely because they're doing quite well. So the reason that we had to approve that is because it met our existing zoning code. Their usage fit within that existing code. And we approved it because we had to, because there'd be a lawsuit if we didn't. So I talked to the city council, I talked to the city planner, I was like, we gotta fix this now. We can't have this happen again. And I was told that, well, we just need to change the general plan, and that's an administration thing. That's whether or not the administration, and when I say administration, I mean the mayor's office. That's what administration means here. And so for weeks, every time we had a planning commission, you know, if anybody wanted to get me going, they'd mention the Quick Quack Wash. But it happened again. It happened again about 4.5 weeks ago, right on the corner of 21st and Wall, which is a 2-block walk from the front runner. There is a piece of property that is now going to be a 7-Eleven gas station directly across the street from a Chevron, right down the street from one of the best rail systems that we have. I don't know if you've ridden the front runner, but they're awesome. They have work tables and Wi-Fi. It's amazing. So we lost that to a 7-Eleven. And I called my friends at UTA, and they're like, well, we can't do anything. And here's the rub, is that there's a developer who purchased property around it. He wanted to put 250 units of housing on that corner, 2 blocks from the front runner, which makes a lot of sense, right? People just get on the train and go back and forth. And we lost it. So we had 7, we're now down to 5. And if somebody doesn't do something soon, like update the general plan as a new mayor, we're going to lose those other 5. And I think it's really important that we are looking 10 to 15 years into the future. It's where are our needs? Where do they go? We cannot afford to lose pedestrian opportunities for mixed-use residential to take public transportation to car-oriented destinations.
Is there a part in this plan that you think needs to be reorganized about limiting, though, up here? I mean, like, what is the plan for the mountain? Because I can just see that a tax base from numerous multi-million-dollar homes is very attractive to a city government to recapture that money. But what is the plan? Do you know?
Well, we don't own the trails. That is, so it's, that's part of it is BLM, part of it is Weaver Pathways is working on pulling together as much property as they can to preserve those trails. I am a big believer in public land trust, and that is something that I think we need to put every single park that we have here into a public land trust, because guess what? If a mayor beyond me 20 years from now decides that, wow, we need some more apartment buildings, guess what's going to go if that's not in a public trust?
Our lot has happened on that.
Yeah, exactly. I really think that we need to make sure that we are putting our assets of open space into a public land trust so that they stay protected. And this is a really large example, but think of New York and think of Central Park. Think of what New York would be without Central Park. It would be unbearable. I mean, I'm not a big fan of New York to begin with, but which is why I live here. But it's open space is essential, and open space and waterfall hikes and enjoying the outdoors is an essential part of being an Ogdenite. I mean, it's what we do. We ride bikes, we ski, we snowboard, we walk, we hike, rock climb. We need to make sure that those are protected assets, and I can promise you that if I'm elected mayor, I am not going to let anybody put intense development up that mountain. It's just, we need to preserve that space, because if we lose it, we're just any other town.
Angel, one of the platforms that you're running on, I'm looking at this here, is to improve education. You talked a little bit about Weber State. I'm hoping maybe you could just comment, maybe provide an assessment, in your opinion, on the relationship between Ogden City and Weber State, and then similarly the relationship that exists between Ogden City and the Ogden School District.
Well, you hit a hot button. It is no great secret that the city of Ogden doesn't play well with the county, doesn't play well with Weber State, and doesn't play well with the school boards. It all comes down to relationships. I see our education as an invaluable asset that is going to help lift up people that need it here, that they deserve access to education. And I am one of those people that with the tide, all ships rise. I don't think we need to be contracted, me, mine, this belongs to Ogden City. I think we need to work better with the county. I think we need to connect with Weber State. I've had a couple of meetings with Brad Mortensen just talking about, what do you need? What do you need that you're not getting that if I'm mayor I could give you? We have such an asset within Weber State. It is a Carnegie Institute, and for those of you who don't know what a Carnegie Institute is, it's where a university signs a charter committing that they are going to use all of their resources to give to the city. Which is why, here's the plug, the Olene Walker Institute will be hosting a mayoral debate on the 18th. And the Olene Walker Institute is set up to do anything and everything with regards to empowering people to be involved in the political process. So we're definitely not utilizing it. In my opinion, the current administration has their head down and is so focused on, we're going to develop around Union Station. We're going to develop lots and lots of things, and I don't think we need to be spending so much money going out of our state trying to recruit jobs and bring them in that don't pay that well to begin with. Factory jobs here have a tendency to pay less than $15 an hour, and that is not living wage. So I think that rather than pulling all that money into offering tax incremental finance which takes money away from our schools, bringing new businesses, bigger businesses here where most of those people aren't going to live here anyway. There isn't a single executive at Amer Sports that lives here. And unfortunately, it's because we've got a challenge with our school system. If you've got kids that are K through 8, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to Google and you're going to look at those school scores. And not to say that our schools are broken. We have some amazing teachers. What's happening and what I've learned through the Ogden Civic Action Network, those kids that aren't doing well testing are not doing well because of issues that are outside of school. It's high mobility. Where am I going to live? It's food scarcity. It's childcare. It's transportation. It's all of these things that are impacting those children so that when they get to school, they're not prepared to learn and they don't have the capacity to learn because they're basically just trying to get through a day. And we need to start working with our nonprofits in the neighborhood that are doing the heavy lifting for those kids and pool them together, and as a city back them, and let's apply for grants. Because if you have a group of 6 to 10 nonprofits backed by a city applying for a grant, that's a bigger amount of money than one nonprofit that's got 20 people could ever have access to. And again, no magic bullet for education, but we need to start looking at what's right in front of us. As far as I'm concerned, the boat's on fire, there are babies on the boat, we got to start pulling them out. And we might not be able to save them all, but we need to start. We need to start making sure, coming together as a community, that we're using all of our assets that we can with the nonprofits and with our community to help get these kids on a path to have a stable education. So, long-winded answer, but it's a really complex problem. There is no short answer for that. So, I hope that answers that.
I wanted to ask, continuing on the same topic, to have you speak more about your specific views on some changes that are going on in the Ogden School District. I'll just keep it to the elementary level and the building situation. You can say which neighborhood you live in. If you're near one of those elementary schools, either Wasatch or Polk, that's slated for demolition, or I don't know what the options are, but how would you plan to work with the school district, as well as would you try to influence them in any, or are you just going to let them just take the path they want to do with those building rehabs? And furthermore, what's your whole platform regarding that topic? Okay, because I have kids in the school district and we're concerned because he's at Polk. And if I can throw into a tag at the end, if you can give your views on the charter schools here in Ogden.
Okay. All right. I'll try to get to all of that. That's a big question. Way to go. Go big or go home. The misconception is that the city can make the school board do anything. Okay, the school board is its own entity. It receives money from state and federal, and it does its own thing. And I think that's why there's been no real effort on the city to connect, when I think that's a missed opportunity. I think that we have to be connected to our school board. I think we need to build a bridge and a relationship and do whatever we can to help the school board make good decisions for the long-range planning of the city. You hit on a thing. I am a sucker for architecture. So any building that has architectural significance, and I look at Polk and I go, wow, that's an amazing place. Me personally, I would want to save it, and I know that that costs a lot of money, and I know a lot of parents have rallied beyond that, but I think that there is an answer if we all pull together as a community and figure out a solution that's going to work, and work for the long-range haul. I'm going to repeat myself again. I don't want to be Draper. I want to have this diverse architecture within all of our, pardon? Well, no, Draper is not a bad place. It's just not me. I don't want to live in a city where there's 5 different designs of homes and all of the big stores look the same and there's a lot of big stores. I don't want a lot of big stores. I want little local businesses and then maybe a couple of larger entities that people are working at. So I want to try to repair and build a relationship between the school board. I want to make sure that we help them get as many assets as they can to be effective. And unfortunately, I don't know what's been signed at this particular point for where they're going to go. This is another thing. If you ever try to find information from the city, it's really difficult to find the person to talk to and find out exactly what's happening. So as far as I know, the last time I looked into it a couple months ago, it wasn't Polk that was on the chopping block. But we have to take a look at what we've got. With regards to charter schools, that's an interesting question, because I have friends who are teachers and their families are in education. Some of them hate charter schools and some of them think charter schools are great. I have to pull back and take a look. I have friends that have children that are hippie granola kind of kids, and they learn well in a certain scenario. with a certain type of environment that is hippie, granola friendly, flowers, painting. And then I have friends that have kids that need structure and need discipline and need to be pushed and challenged, or they're going to be bored and they're going to act out. Some charter schools, with charter schools, you can find particular environments that will allow your child to excel. So I'm on the fence. I see both sides of that. I see how some people are upset that the charter schools aren't teaching exactly what is happening in the district schools. And then I also see it from a parent's side of, my kid doesn't do well in that environment and I love this charter school to death. So again, I think we need to talk to the school district and find out how we can work collectively together. It shouldn't be an us and them thing, because there should be an outlet with a charter school. If a child isn't doing well in a public school, and if there are relationships built between the public schools and the charter schools, maybe this one little hippie granola kid would love that school and start to do well, because that's not what we offer at this particular public school. So relationships, and I don't make decisions on things unless I've had some time to digest them and I've had facts and I talk to people. You've got to talk to a lot of people. I had somebody at I was at a talk last night and they asked me a question that I hadn't been asked before, and they wanted a different answer and they just kept pushing and pushing, and I said, you know what, I can't make a decision. I don't have enough data. And I'm not going to knee jerk, and I know the decision you want me to say, but I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not just going to cop out and pander and give you the answer that you want, because you don't make big decisions lightly. And so I think looking at the school board and this other question that was asked last night about transportation, it's the same thing for me.
Well, on the lighter side of things,
Yes, please. Tell a joke. That got really heavy. I know, but it's...
I just want to know how you feel about dogs.
Oh, I am such a sucker for dogs. My fiance and I have all of our dogs are from rescues, and we've fostered dogs, but we haven't fostered dogs since we moved here because my plate's been a little full. But we have been involved in dog rescue for a very long time, and I'm big on dogs, and I think they're a great equalizer. I like cats too, but if I had to choose, I would be team dog.
Your dogs are cute.
Yeah, and when you're done, there's a legal.
You gotta plug.
Oh yes. Okay. Here's the opportunity while we're waiting. We have one of our dogs is kind of famous. He has almost 10,000 followers. His Instagram account is @MightySherman, and he's a mix with a head as big as a regulation volleyball. I used to go around saying it's the size of a regulation basketball, and then I measured it, and I'm like, okay, volleyball. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so still on dogs. Like right now, closer. Right now, we don't have. I think all the up on the trails, they all legally they're all supposed to be leashed.
Closer.
They're supposed to
There
be
you
leashed.
go.
Okay, and I know like in Mill Creek and Salt Lake, like they'll have off leash days, like every other day. And I have a dog that loves to run, but lately I've just been kind of following the rules and keeping her on the leash all the time. But I would love to be able to legally let her off sometimes. If we.
I totally see where you're coming from, and I agree with you that there should be a split. We have a dog that is fearful, and if a dog approaches her and she's on a leash, her fear is going to be translated into this snarling and snapping, and I don't want that. And so every time an unleashed dog comes charging at me, I lose my mind. I have to pick her up because I don't want an incident. But yet I also understand that there are some dogs that like to run off leash, and I believe that we should follow policies that other cities have, where this day, and this day, off leash. These days, on leash. And then everybody would feel, this is kind of quintessentially what government is about, right? Structure and rules for everybody's safety. So I would full-heartedly back a very stringent program that says these days are leashed, these days are unleashed, and you know, we have to give it. You ready? Give it some teeth. But we have to be able to have a fine system, because otherwise people are, you know, we want to think that people are going to do things from the goodness of their heart, but sometimes they need to be have a little smack on the knuckles that's going to cost them a check. Okay, thanks.
You've mentioned we live in a wonderful, beautiful location, but the air quality in northern Utah is unhealthy. I have a child who suffers from asthma that has to wear a mask like we're in Beijing. It's very sad, to the point where we've had to consider relocating where we live, which we don't want to do because the air quality is so bad here. So what, if you're elected mayor, what plans do you have, if any, at this point, to move us forward collectively, not only as a city, but counties, northern Utah, as an entire state, the whole Wasatch Front, to improve that part? Because the world, the outside world isn't going to be any good if none of us can breathe in it. So
They wait for that to fill up, and then they build the next building, because they use the money from the first project to fund the second project. You can do that legally as a city. In your plan, you can say, nope, this is where the development is going to happen. And if you're going to build a business, a commercial business that has residential, it has to happen here first, and then it can go to the next place, and then it can go to the next place. We are within our legal rights to do so, and we don't do that. And I think that we should start where we need pedestrian traffic, where we're going to have density of people living places. We're going to make sure that if you have places to walk to, grocery stores, coffee shops. Okay, I'm off my soapbox now.
Okay, good evening, and thank you, Angel. And first, I want to personally thank you for a favor you did for a friend of mine, that everything came out good for her. So I just wanted to share that testimony that I do genuinely believe Angel cares. I'm a community activist here in Ogden, and I got a question in reference to the racial bias training you were talking about, which I totally agree is 100% needed. I'm not sure statistically how helpful that is, being with the continued increase of police shootings in the United States and racial bias training across the departments all over the United States. I don't see a correlation with that training and the lessening of shootings or police brutality. The last statistics we had here in Ogden were back in 2010, when Chief Greiner was the chief of police. He had stated that at that time Ogden was about 23% Latinos, yet the youth were accounting for over 50% of the arrest rates, the Latino youth. So they were getting arrested at twice their population at that time. So there's obviously a racial bias in the Ogden City Police Department, because the numbers speak for themselves. Now, in saying that, there is a department in Wisconsin that has implemented a racial bias testing prior to employment. They realize that racial bias comes at a very young age, as young as 4 years old, and is carried on throughout life most of the time, and is sometimes not reversed with the majority of people. So I don't believe 12 hours of racial bias training with the police a year is going to change somebody from being racist or non-biased against other races. So I have two questions. Since the Ogden Police Department hasn't provided any arrest statistics with Latinos since 2010, would you be willing to make current statistics with Latinos public and see if those have increased or decreased, and take action upon those percentages? And my second question is, would you implement racial bias testing rather than, and as well as continue training in order to prevent racist people from joining the police department?
Great questions. Yes and yes. I believe in full transparency. I think that every data point should be available to a citizen. And if you can't get information, that it's just wrong. It is not how a government is supposed to work. And if I'm mayor and you want that information, I will make sure you get that information. With regards to bias training, I hear you that you know, my grandmother, rest her soul, was racist. Right? You know, when people are really old, they get very rigid. And my grandmother would say, well, you know, well, that person's okay and that person's okay, but the sweeping generality for this particular group is not. And, you know, I realized very quickly in my 20s that you're not going to change somebody's mind. So I hear you that you're not going to change that. So implementing testing prior to bringing people on the force, absolutely. I don't see any problem with that at all. But I'm going to tell you, I'm still going to go for the bias training. And I don't think that it should be, you know, just 12 hours over a couple of days. I think it should be as much as officers are operating with gun training, which is like every 2 weeks. I think you should sit down and then that somebody should have this discussion of this safe person who's outside. There's actually a police officer that has retired. He was from somewhere in Northern California, and he dropped out because he realized he was part of the prison to pipeline mentality in his force. And so he goes around and he talks to other officers saying that, hey, I didn't realize that this was happening, but it's happening, and we need to check that. So I believe that we have good officers, and I believe just like in any other profession, there are always a couple of people that may not be the best representation of the ideal of that department or company. And I will do my best to make sure that if we have somebody that we can prove on record that is having an issue, that they're going to be dealt with, because we need to build that bridge. We need to repair that trust, and our crime rate is going to go down if we can get our officers personally connected to community leaders, because it will be this feed loop of here's information, here's what's happening in my neighborhood, help me fix this. And most officers get into being a police officer because they want to serve. They really and genuinely haven't, at least the ones that I've talked to, it seems to be about 80% of them, they've always wanted to be a cop, they want to help people. And then there are a certain other amount of people that are kind of just doing it to do it. But mostly it's a calling. And so I think that as we reconnect our community to our public safety, it's going to improve the quality of everybody's lives. And I think that those relationships are key and imperative. We're never going to get a hold of the gang and the drug situation in the certain pockets that we have unless we have community buy-in, that I trust you enough to call you, I trust you enough to text you, and that you're going to come and you're going to take me seriously, and we're going to eradicate the things that are happening in my neighborhood that I don't want.
Hi. Well, you took most of my, you've already answered most of my questions, and I love that you're focusing on the police, because that is a big part of it, and I do have actually 2 extended family members who are on the Ogden Police Force. So you keep speaking about community and bringing it together, and I know you mentioned with the police force that if they were on a regular beat and they could walk around and they could get to know the community, and I'm very much a proponent of that, you know, having that connection with people, because I think really bringing people together and actually being able to interact is what helps prevent bias, because then you start to build that, form that relationship.
See them as a person.
Absolutely. And to build ourselves as a community, I mean, this is great that we are all here and we're part of this, but, you know, getting people to come to things like this is not always easy. People don't like politics. They don't want to do this on their work day if they got off work. Community events are important. Community, you know, building that. So what I'm asking is your plan for how you are going to make the community more inclusive. You know, what types of things that you're going to do to kind of bring that together beyond just the police having a walking beat. I mean, do you have something in mind to help build a community structure?
I do. And, you know, I'm honest, it's not my idea. It's an idea that already exists that isn't being utilized to its capacity within Ogden City. How many people in this room know that you can apply to Ogden City and get $1,000 to throw a block party? Show of hands?
Hey, I held a block party and did not.
One person. There's how many people are here? Is it 3, 6, 9, 12? There's about 18 people, some standing outside this room, and one person raised their hand. This comes back to communication. We do not have a chief information officer in the city of Ogden. Okay, I know towns that have 20,000 people that have a chief information officer, and a chief information officer's job is, a part of it is handling anything bad that happens and making sure that there's a proper and thoughtful response and how you're going to manage that. And then the other side of that is cheerleader, good information, look at all the great stuff that we're doing. And then the other 50% of that job is boots on the ground at every single community event, charity function, so that there are eyes and ears for the administration of what everybody wants and needs, and showing up. And that right there, we offer $1,000 to close off a section of a street, and there's criteria that say that you have to do certain things. It can't be political. I looked into that. I was like, yes, $3,000. No. Oh, so, but it's designed to bring community together, and that's where we really need to get back. And nobody knows about this because there isn't a proper information flow from the administration. Communication and transparency is not a priority of this current administration. Business development is. And how does that help you as a community? I'm more concerned about thinking locally. I'm more concerned about finding microloans or marketing assistance for businesses that are already here, that need, what do you need? I'd like to ask that question. What do you need? What do you need to hire one person, 3 people? Is it marketing support? Do you need some sort of discount on supplies? Can I leverage my relationships to help you raise your bar with your business? That's what I want to do with business development here. And those those block parties, those are great ideas. That brings a community together, and you can have a lot of hot dogs and a bouncy house and all sorts of crazy things.
Live band.
Live band, there you go. Not after 10. You want those neighbors to like you, not hate you.
I just wanted to make, if I read the numbers correctly, there was about 18,000 businesses already in Ogden. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So imagine if we grew all those businesses just a little bit.
Power of one. Power of one. Think about how that is. Look at what's right in front of you. If we could have even half of those businesses, just hire one person. It's going to,
That's 10,000 jobs.
That's 10,000 jobs right there. And I also want to make sure that when we're talking to businesses, that we are helping them get what they need so that they can provide a living wage. That's really, really important. I don't want to see people working for $10 an hour, $11 an hour that are full-grown adults. Okay, it's okay if you're in college, that you're taking a lower paying job, because that's cool. I did that. But I don't want to see the single mom in East Central raising 2 kids working 2.5 jobs at $10 an hour because that's what she needs to keep her kids fed and the lights on and a roof over their heads. I don't want to see that. I want to see opportunity. I want to see, and again, coming back to connection and communication, I want to make sure that we're working with Weber State to make sure all of our citizens know these assets that we have, people that can give you help. I don't know if you know this, but depending on your circumstances, there's a grant that's available for you to apply to for up to $600 for an emergency, like if you can't pay rent, your car was totaled, you're an hourly employee, you couldn't go to work, you're going to be short, you're going to lose your house. You can apply through any one of the nonprofits, YCC specifically, to help get you connected to money to help move you along. And again, I'm going to go back to the nonprofits. We have some amazing nonprofits, and YCC does an incredible job with just under $3 million a year helping people get out of violent situations, either sexual violence or physical violence. And the average client moves through our program between 1.5 years to sometimes 2.5 years. They start off with, you're out, you're safe, you're here, you can live here. And then we figure out, we've got your child in daycare, we're helping you get some education, we're helping get you an apartment, and there's always that safety net to fall back on. Everybody needs a hand up. I'm not talking about giving people money, I'm talking about getting people connected to programs that are already there that they don't know about. I want to turn up the volume on Ogden's communication and make sure that we are connected to our citizens so that they live their best lives. They're aware of grants and programs that can help them get to where they want to be. We have some amazing assets in this community, and just not enough people know about them. And I want to change that.
Okay, thank you. Lately in the news, Angel, there's been stories about the inland port in the news about protesters interrupting procedures and stuff like that they're trying to accomplish. And recently there were some more arrests. The reason why I asked this, even though this is a Salt Lake issue, there's a growing community of activists here in Ogden, and protests are becoming more prevalent here. As a matter of fact, there's one tomorrow in front of the municipal building for the Trump camps at the border. Now recently, it was reported in the news today that Governor Herbert referred to the protesters as borderline terrorists. Do you agree with that language?
I do not agree with that language. I believe in people's right to protest. It is in the Constitution, and I follow Jackie Biskupski's words of that, as long as it's not violent. And there's back and forth with did the cops start it? Did the people start it? I'm not going to weigh in on that. We have a right as people to speak and to have our voices heard. And I am hopeful as mayor that I'm never going to have those kinds of problems, because my door is going to be open, that people can come directly to me, or the people that work for me, and that they will be heard and that they will get an answer. You asked about the inland port is kind of a Salt Lake City thing, but there's also people talking about whether or not we're going to be a hub in Ogden. We have an opportunity for that. I went to, a couple of months ago, I went to the governor's, the economic summit of Utah. It's held every year, and I went to a panel on the inland port. And I asked questions that they couldn't give answers to. They don't even really know what it's supposed to be doing. And I specifically asked about this satellite location thing, because that was something that was being floated by. And I wanted information, because is it going to bring jobs? Okay, let's talk about that. But what is it going to cost us to do so, to act as a satellite port? How much is that going to cost our city when we have issues paying for other things? So I need the data to weigh that, to figure it out. And then we also have to think about air quality as well. Is that going to change anything? So, and the 4 people on that panel didn't have any answers for me yet. It's not a fully formed idea. And we just need to keep on it and keep requesting information so that we know what's going to happen.
I was wondering if you know about dark sky, and if you know it, and if you as mayor would be willing to have Ogden become a dark sky community.
I love the Dark Sky Initiative because it helps us connect to our natural beauty. My fiance and I just went to a thing at a farm about an hour and a half here to watch fireflies. And that owner of the farm is worried about that as well, because there's people who have set up on the outside of the periphery of her farm. It's a lot of development, and she's afraid that she's going to lose that magic. So we are technically already past where we could be a dark sky community. Would I be willing to make sure that certain sections are protected and limited? Yes, I am willing to entertain.
We're not past it.
That's
We could roll it back.
But it's a tricky part with looking at the overall development and how we're going to do that. First, we need to designate an area that is going to be part of the dark sky. We couldn't possibly make all of Ogden a dark sky initiative.
Toronto is a dark sky city. We could do it.
Okay. I would be.
Money, doesn't it?
It comes down to money. It does. I am willing. Here's the answer. I am a big fan of nature. It is one of the number one reasons that I moved here. I would love to be able to sit in my backyard and look up and see actual stars and have clear skies. And if we could come to a solution that isn't going to hurt the city financially, if we can figure out a way to pencil it out with a pro forma and make it work, I'm all about it. But again, we have a triage list of things. Remember, we've been neglecting infrastructure for a very long time. So I want to say yes, but I also want to say we're going to have to triage our
It's
points.
right in with that. It's right in with that.
I actually thought of something that it's a bigger issue, and hopefully it doesn't happen again. But earlier this year, we had some shutdown stuff, and a big portion of the city is federal government, and there are still businesses suffering and trying to recover. So if something like that is to happen again, do you have a plan to help those businesses to maintain themselves through that? Because even if the people that work, got paid back, the businesses don't necessarily recoup any losses. So do you have something in mind to protect the businesses that are hurt with those kind of situations, because we have so many employees?
Well, one of the things that was great about the shutdown is that it really rallied people together on Facebook. There were communities showing up to help people with food. Catholic Community Services made sure that everybody knew that they were available for a food source, and local businesses along 25th Street fed people, and big Facebook groups that normally spend a lot of time snarking and poking holes and posting inappropriate things really came together and served each other as a community. Do I have enough money in the budget to make an actual plan so that here's like an emergency loan type of situation? I don't know, but that's something that sounds like a good idea for me. But I am also hoping that as we reconnect to the community and we help other businesses learn how to grow from within and market, hopefully we won't get to that point, because we'll have that kind of connection that people will come to us before it's too late. So I'm focusing on building our communication and our connection, and I'm willing to explore an emergency business fund. But again, we have to figure out how it fits into the budget. And to me, that idea sounds like it would be something to be good to make sure that it's set. Here's a drip, and it's constant, so that when we have a big event that we can access that through low interest or no cost loans.
So I think we'd all agree that Ogden is a one-of-a-kind community. But are there other cities, towns, communities that you're aware of or that you've visited that have some of some best practices that you would look to put in motion here in our city?
I'm so glad that you asked that question. I gotta tell you, this group has asked some of the most amazing questions that I've had, so yeah, good for you. There is I don't know if you've heard of strongtowns.org. Strongtowns.org it started off about 8 years ago with a group of engineers and planning geeks realizing that they were doing things directed by a city council or directed by a mayor that were not going to serve the community in the long run, that were actually going to end up costing them money. An example of this is a cul-de-sac. When you bring services to a cul-de-sac neighborhood that's being developed, the road and the infrastructure that goes with it, the water, the sewer, the power, there's a big price tag for that. And if you look at the tax value on those 6 homes at the cul-de-sac, you're never going to pay that back. It's upside down. And so this group of city planners and engineers started going, this isn't right. This is going to ultimately tank you in the long run if you don't start being smarter about how you're doing that, or making sure that you're doing something to recoup those losses that you just put that water, sewer, and power to 6 homes that cost you, over $800,000 to do, and the taxes for those homes are like, $20,000 a year. It's upside down. So I've been following strongtowns.org for a long time because I'm a data geek, and they do just that. They talk about it. There's also a consulting company called Verduna that does a podcast called Go Cultivate, which is, Verduna is a company that goes to cities like Fayette and cities in Texas and does just that. It says, let's take a look. What's your 5-year plan? What's your list of things that you want to do? And let's look at what everything costs and the depreciation of the roads, and let's get you to be fiscally sustainable. And that, the most important thing about that when you hire a consulting company like that is there has to be community buy-in. And that's one of the #1 things, is that you have to empower the community to be able to help you along this journey of planning and making sure that everybody is getting what they want. You need to have a great quality of life. So that is my plan. My plan would be to look to other cities, and if we're looking at cities that have similar assets to us, Boise is one, Austin is one. Those are towns that I could see us somewhat looking like in about 15 to 20 years, which is very different than the current administration that took a field trip to Denver, Colorado, and said that these are the great things. They're looking at Denver, Colorado as being the model. I don't want to be Denver. I want to be Ogden.
Great. Okay, this question is from my fiance Angie, who can't make it tonight, but she's a fan of yours. So far, she's a fan of yours. She likes it.
Don't vote. No pressure, Malik. No pressure.
So she refers to our current mayor as the chicken hater mayor. We used to have a pet chicken before the ordinance
I read the article.
that we had to give up because we didn't meet the qualifications now. They require 2,000 square feet of backyard in order to even be considered, without any type of, structures on them, trees or anything like that, counting within the 2,000. That's like half of a high school basketball court. Okay.
Good analogy.
Which makes it extremely difficult for anybody in Ogden to qualify. Now you're saying we're hitting a population of almost 100,000.
We're just under 90,000.
Okay.
We're going to hit 100,000.
And there's been less than 50 permits given by the city, which is less than 1/10% of the people qualifying for a chicken permit. Will you revisit the chicken ordinance and make it more accessible to people just like myself?
Well, I hear your pain, and I totally get it. And I think one thing that you also missed about the fact that we're not having people sign up, a lot of people are afraid to sign up because the process is, when you look at the form, do I meet it? Do I not? Where's the setback? There's a lot of complicated steps in there that if you're not just an engineering type of person, it's not going to make a whole lot of sense. And I've talked to several people that have not applied because they're afraid that they don't make it and they don't want to lose their chickens. The way I look at it is that we all have a right to enjoy our property so long as we're not infringing on the rights of others. So I think that one thing that you missed is that in the chicken ordinance, the current chicken ordinance, even if you got a permission letter from your landlord, you couldn't have chickens. I think that's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. If the person you're renting from says that you can have chickens, you should be able to have chickens. And I think that people, this is Utah. This is like the homesteading prepper state. If you want to grow your own food, you should be able to. Right. You should be able to grow your own food. I think that children should be connected to the life cycle of growing plants and then having animals. I don't think we should have like true livestock in Ogden. I'm not going to back cows, but I think chickens are, as long as you are not having complaints from your neighbors, and we have a tiered system of like if if they come out and they record what's happening and we can document that you got a rooster and that rooster is a problem.
Well, roosters are a problem.
Yeah. So I'm thinking along those lines. I'm thinking that we need to revisit with some documentation. These fines will be issued if the proper documentation goes, and we just want everybody to be good neighbors. So I think as long as you're a good neighbor and you're following all of those rules that says that your feed is properly locked up so you're not attracting vermin. Your chickens aren't being a nuisance and going into the neighbor's yard every day. You don't have a rooster waking people up at 0:30. As long as those are met, I think that we should revisit it, and I think we should probably make them a little smaller, because you're absolutely right. The neighborhoods that need chickens the most to actually feed their families because they're at or below the poverty line, they can't have them.
Well, I walk the 8-block radius in my neighborhood, not one backyard qualified for chicken.
Yeah, I think the city probably overcorrected to an airing, and I think it can be pulled back a little. And I think we should, again, it keeps coming back to fines that hurt. because there should be an escalation series, and then you should have a fine, and then if you continue to have fines, then you lose your right to have chickens. Because we want to make sure that everybody that lives around someone has chickens, has an enjoyment of their property. That doesn't smell, there aren't vermin, and it isn't noisy. And most chickens that I know are relatively quiet, you know, a little bark, bark, but you know, not too much.
Only when they're laying an egg.
That's
Well, I
right.
think you got her vote then.
Do you do other animal imitations?
Yes, sir.
So my question is, deals with the medical marijuana movement happening across the nation in our state, Utah. What is your stance with it, and what effects do you want it to have on our community, and what you're going to do to have the best transition into that lifestyle?
Well, here's the thing. It's state. We have nothing to do with it. And from a personal standpoint, me personally, I found it offensive that what the people voted for was completely gutted. I believe that, yes, there should always be a little bit of oversight and tweaking, but that bill was gutted. And I think that somebody who has seizures or somebody who has cancer should have access to something that isn't pharmaceutical if it makes them feel better. We just had a planning commission meeting about what it looks like in Ogden. And again, we don't control this. This is state-owned stuff. The distribution stores are owned by the state, and the growers are picked by they are licensed by the state. And so what we've done is, as a planning commission, we have chosen the areas that they're going in, and they follow a lot of the same rules that liquor establishments do. They can't be in neighborhoods, they can't be by churches, you know. So I really, as it rolls on board, I really don't see it affecting people hardly at all, because the distribution point is going to be a state-owned store, just like a liquor store. And the grower, which I'm not so sure we're going to have any growers here because we don't have a lot of the space that they're looking for. But if we do, we have them set in industrial areas that are away from families and children. And growers don't want you to know what's in there, so you'll never know. It'll just look like a warehouse, and it doesn't have any advertising on it. And the distribution centers may only have one sign with a green cross, and no one may be handing materials outside of that. They may not be approaching people, and they can't buy ads and things like that. So it's the impact on Ogden is going to be very minimal. And again, it's a state thing.
As a city, would you be willing to work with the Department of Agriculture?
Microphone, silly.
If and when you're elected mayor, as a city of Ogden, would you be willing to work with the Department of Agriculture to help better the patients of Ogden?
I am always open to working with any form of government. I believe in communication, and I believe in relationships. Agriculture, there's only a finite number of people that are growing, and they're all growing indoors. They're not growing outside. So the Department of Ag doesn't really have much to do with how the growers are operating. Again, I can't emphasize enough that a city doesn't have much control over this at all. It's like me trying to manage how liquor gets in the liquor store. It's all state. But I believe that people have a right to medical marijuana, and it should be easy, and we'll see as time goes by whether or not these state stores are working. There's a contingency in there that they can allow more if they can't meet the demands, and we'll see how that goes.
Hello. I'm a believer. Since I saw your card in Cuppa, I've been telling everyone, actively persuading people on the streets, like, please vote for Castillo.
Thank you.
So I work for a company named Landslide, and they're a political contracting company, and they recently took up Daniel Tavish's campaign to knock doors. So I had to work on that. So it was like an internal conflict.
Wow. That had to be
It's
hard.
$15 an hour though, so yes, it was heartbreaking. And with a couple people, I just completely broke. Like, don't vote for this
but
person.
kudos to your work ethic and integrity. You're doing what you got to do.
So, my first question is, do you think you can win against Caldwell Tavish and this other third candidate, and why?
I do. I do because of the conversations that I've been having with people, that people are tired of stagnation and the status quo, and that they're ready for change. With regards to Tabish, Tabish is essentially Mike 2.0. He's not saying, it's all business, but I also believe that something that he's saying is dangerous. This whole broaden the base, cut the taxes thing. If we don't have enough money to fund our infrastructure as it is, and if you're going to broaden the base and cut taxes, you're looking at a 4-year return. You're just going to put us in a hole, and it's a hole we're not going to be able to get out. So I think that's dangerous.
The unfortunate thing is, I completely agree with you, but a lot of voters see that lower taxes, that's lower property tax for me, that's a lower water bill for me, not realizing the bigger consequences like a lot of people do. But my fear is that will be the majority.
I hear you, and what I'm counting on is everybody that you know. Right now, for the last 2 elections, we've had 11,700 and change people voting. That is less than 7% of the entire city that is selecting a mayor. How your life is going to be affected. So what I'm hoping is, I've worked with Indivisible Ogden last year, and I helped register people, and I accounted for a couple hundred of those 10,000 new registered voters that Indivisible Ogden registered, and at least 6,000 of them are in Ogden, and so that's a new set of voters. And we are also vote by mail. We are also get your driver's license and you're registered to vote. So I'm counting on this new pool of voters that are 30 and below, that are really concerned about quality of life issues, that are dragging around huge student debt, that are making entry-level wages because they just got out of college, and they have all of these things that are important to them, like the environment and quality of life. I'm counting on those people to show up and vote. And the way that you can help me get there is to take the responsibility to tell 10 of your friends, email 10 of your friends, text 10 of your friends my link and say, this is the person that I'm voting for. Check her out. You want to talk to her, she'll talk to you. My phone number is on my flyers. My email is on my flyers. I am accessible. And I have conversations with people all the time because knowledge is power. So that's how we're going to do that, and I am hopeful that there are a lot of people. I've knocked on thousands of doors, and on those thousands of doors that I've knocked, my numbers are good. So
Sweet.
So now, granted, it's only a small section because other people are knocking doors. So I don't believe that it's going to be this huge David Goliath thing. I think it's a little closer. And one of the exciting things is that City Council requested inclusionary zoning information from Weber State. That's a win. That they're thinking about it, that they're looking at it, because it wasn't on their radar until I started complaining about it in early January. So I really believe that people are ready for change, want quality of life issues, not just things that are good for big business, but what's good for the people here. What's going to make your life better living in Ogden and connecting as a community. That's something that's really lacking now that I'm looking to restore.
Get as many people as you can to the debate.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Seriously,
I think people
seriously, I want a
stage.
lot. Drag your friends to the debate. I need a lot of bodies in the audience. It is the 18th at Weber State University. It's held in Lindquist Hall. If you go to my page or my website, Angel for Ogden, you'll have it's listed under the events, and it has all of the information, the address, and the time. And
I thought it was the 19th of Thursday.
no, it's the 18th.
Okay, I'm glad enough to be here to find that out.
Right on.
So you've mentioned that you're about transparency, which I'm a big fan of. I think governments from low to high need to be more transparent. Seems we're going in a different direction, sadly. So I'm happy to see that we have a candidate that is willing to push that. But being that you said just in the process of applying for some of these programs that are already available, it takes an engineer's degree to get through the process. I think also the same thing happens when just looking at the data. If we're more transparent, if I'm not a researcher, if I'm not a data geek, how do we make sense of some of that communication you're willing to put out there? Do you have a plan to kind of simplify, streamline these processes?
As a matter of fact, I do. As a matter of fact, I do. I am a big picture person. I like graphs, pie charts, and things that give you some
competition and so on. And before you know, we're already having Salt Lake chains enter into downtown. And there's a lot of empty buildings, spaces, because they're just too expensive. And mom and pods cannot afford it. So two mayors ago, there was a lot of programs that was for do the BIC, lending, and so on. And there was also quite a big marketing push. This is when downtown, the mall was just going down and so on and so forth. But as we have progressed, gentrification has set in. And I see we are promoting for large corporations out of state for the job. And I just wonder what your thoughts are, especially as we see 25th Street exploding.
Right.
Someday Park City as a role model is going to be a discussion.
Yeah, I don't live in Park City for a reason. I could have moved anywhere in Utah, and I chose here. And so I hear you. And there is nothing that a mayor can do about what the retail rent price is going to be. But what you can do are two things. And I alluded to this before. Restructuring our business development program to put more emphasis on businesses that are already here. And, I'm a marketing person, so of course I'm like, marketing support. I want to be able to I want to go boots on the ground and task an employee to go from business to business and ask the question that I always ask: what do you need? What do you need to grow your business? What do you need to take it to that next level? What do you need to hire one person, to hire 3 people? What does that look like? And take that information and get that business owner connected to the appropriate people. Is it a micro loan? Is it a bigger loan? Does that business need to buy an actual bigger property to get out of paying rent? Is that what's going to take that business to the next level if we can lower our monthly fee because we're owning as opposed to buying? And again, we have programs within the city already. If any business owner here doesn't know who Sarah Stoffers is, you should. Sarah Stoffers is the Ogden City, I refer to her as the fairy godmoney person, because she knows all of the banks, all of the things that are available to new businesses starting up, so that you can piece together a loan here, a grant here, and get you the mentorship that you need to. Do you need a business plan? Okay, well, you can go to this person, and for $75, this person will help you write your business plan, and then when you're ready, then we'll introduce you to this vice president, because he loves your kind of business. He's an art guy or he's a coffee guy, and we'll move you down. We have those resources that are available, and we are not selling them, where people don't know about them. No, Sarah Stoffers is part of business development, and she can get you connected to anybody you want to be connected to as to how to grow your business, and more importantly, she has relationships with vice presidents of banks that can get you a meeting to talk about what it is that you want to talk about. And more importantly, she understands the background of grants that are available to help cobble together. So I think we need to put the focus back on local, and not to say we completely stop looking at other outside businesses, but let's focus on what we have right here. Fiscally, that makes more sense. If it's going to cost me less money to get this business to do better that's already here and guaranteeing me another 1 or 3 jobs, as opposed to giving away a bunch of tax increment financing to bring in a manufacturing company that may not stay here after 10 years. I want to invest in our community and really bring the focus home. Well, we'll continue to wave the Ogden flag, but I think we need a shift.
So my question kind of goes in line with his as well. It took my partner and I a 1.5 years of running our business to be able to find a shop space that was affordable for us to be able to operate out of. Most of the smaller shop spaces for local artisans that do the kind of work that we do have huge waiting lists, huge, because there's just not very many small shop spaces that are in zoning where you can do light manufacturing. And we found a shop space, which is awesome because it's something we can actually afford. But we found out from the owner of that shop, his grandfather built the shop spaces and has been expanding them, and then his parents continued to run that company. They get harassed quite frequently from the city. They have police officers that are stationed there to watch. They're just waiting for any of their renters to mess up on the smallest thing so that they can shut that down because they want to develop the Riverwalk area. What are your feelings on supporting these companies from a city level so that they can continue to provide these shop spaces in different areas where local artisans can work without being harassed by the city because they want a nice Riverwalk space?
Well, considering that the city has this big push and put together the creative district and says that they want to support arts, that sounds really wrong, doesn't it? And it doesn't make any sense to me either. I think that we should do everything we can to support local artisans and art, because it helps give character to the city. It's one of the reasons why we put together a creative district, because it's proven by many studies that having artists and having that synergy and having art and people making art living there raises the value of the entire city. There's more money that comes in, and there are plenty of reports that support that. You can just Google it, it's not too hard, or you could call the Utah Cultural Alliance. They will give you all that information that says, yes, art is good for a city. So with regards to the harassment, I would strongly encourage your friend to start talking to city council, because I don't think they're gonna stand for that. I wouldn't. It makes no sense if a person is using their property and using it within their right, and we have to support creativity. We really do. We just put a whole bunch of resources behind developing the creative district. That sounds like it's a complete disconnect with the direction that we're supposed to be going.
So the issue that they're running into is we have the creative district, but somebody like my partner and I that do metal work, it's light metal work, we're making like tables and mantles and small things like that. We're pushed over to the industrial area, which we would love to be included somewhere downtown, but it seems like the city's buying up these properties and wanting to throw up more office buildings, which I don't know that we actually need more office buildings.
They want to put up type A office buildings. It's a very specific type.
We have so many vacant type A office buildings. Why are we wanting to build more of those when we tear down the Hostess building, which could have been used by several light manufacturing artisans and people who actually want to make this space cooler? So we're getting pushed to these industrial areas, but the industrial areas are catering to larger manufacturing companies. So there's just no space for us to exist. It's kind of like we're the redheaded stepchild in the corner.
I totally hear you. And here's an idea. You know, the CVS building that's been sitting empty for over 10 years that held a military exercise just last year, the city owns that particular property. What would it look like if...
You mean the Rite Aid?
The Rite Aid, I'm sorry. I said CVS. It's late. Yes, the Rite Aid property. What would it look like if, as a city, we figured out how much it would cost to insure that, and then allow artists to divide and use that space with a 6-month vacancy? There isn't any business that buys a property that can't wait 6 months, because escrow can take 30 to 60 to 90 days. That knowing that that nonprofit can operate there, or that artist can operate there, paying electricity and paying insurance, which is definitely less than what a rent would cost you somewhere. What if we did that with the empty properties that we owned? When Amir Jackson actually pointed out that the nonprofits in our neighborhood that are doing really, really well and doing the big, important work, like YCC, I keep going to that because I'm a board member, they were given their property. They didn't have to purchase their property. Somebody gave it to them, and then they got in and they started doing what they were doing. We can't give away property, but why can't we let people use property until we find the right developer and enter into a development agreement with that developer? And these people that are using that property to help do great community stuff know that it's not forever, but at least it helps them move their projects along and get the exposure that they need and not have to worry about paying rent. They're just paying insurance and utilities. Anybody else? There you are.
I have one question for you. It's it's kind of a big one. It goes back to the community policing, and it seems like the police force has changed. Their job description has changed so much over decades, but it just seems like it's a broken system. They're not peace officers anymore. They're having to try to solve social problems that they're not trained to do. They're hiring people that don't really have that spirit for humanity. It just seems like it's so messed up right now. And I'm not saying that there aren't good officers. There's good officers. There's bad officers. It just seems like there needs to be just an overhaul for everybody's benefit on both sides, and I just wondered if you had any ideas about that. And
I do.
And I'm interested in a civilian review board too.
Okay, I am all for a civilian review board because, as I kept saying over and over, we need to have our community connected to our administration, to our fire and safety. We need to involve people who live here in the actual decisions that are being made in their community. With regards to, you hit something right on the head where police officers are asked, boy, it's a long day, have been asked to act as social workers, and that's absolutely true. I say, as a marketing consultant, when I get a problem, I look to see who else has already solved that problem. What are other entities that are bigger and have more money than you do, what are they doing? Because chances are they have something really similar that they've gone through. And it turns out that there are cities who have worked to apply for grants to have a social worker paired with a police officer with a tablet, so whenever they encounter someone who's mentally ill or homeless, that it is no longer the police officer's obligation to make sure that person gets connected to services, it's the social worker. And the social worker is funded by a grant, so it's not taking money away from the city, and that social worker is also, they're getting paid for their job and they're accruing hours as they need for their certification. And they put a person that is non-threatening with a gun, who knows their name, who has that kind of social worker heart that says, I care about you, I want to connect to you, I want to help you. There have been other cities that have utilized that program to great capacity, and it's working really, really well. And that is something, again, why do we have to pay for it when grants are available to do that? Why can't we try that and see how that works out? Because I think that if other cities have success, we can have success too, especially because our people care. Our officers don't want to be social workers. They're not qualified for it, and it involves a whole bunch of paperwork. But if you have a social worker with a tablet that's already connected to the nonprofits and the state services that are available, and that person gives, the social worker gives that person their card, here's my number, Bob. Call me anytime. I'm going to help you, Bob. I'm less threatening as a social worker. I don't have a gun. I don't have a badge. Chances are I'm going to allow you to help me. There was actually an article in the, I want to say Salt Lake Tribune. Yeah, Salt Lake Tribune, about a girl who had, it took her 8 years, but it came down to that interaction with the officer and the social worker that got her the information that she needed to get clean and to get her life back on track. And she's graduated college, and she has a great job and kids, and it's a proven thing that works. But we just have to, as an administration, say, this is an issue that's important to me. I care about this. Make this happen. I think we're all questioned out. Right. Thank you very much. I would encourage you all to take a business card, and remember, Commit to 10 people if you believe in what I say. Commit to 10 people that you're going to send them my link, that you're going to ask them to vote for me, and then ask them to do the same. And don't miss our debate at Weber State University. The 18th.
We had to give up Flaming Lips VIP tickets.
Yeah, we gave up VIP Flaming Lips tickets to do this debate, so you better be there. And all that information about the debate is on my website, angelforogden.com, and also on my Facebook page, Angel for Ogden. Thank you.
Angel, would you mind if I grab a few of these to hang on my neighbor's door?
Take as many as you like. Flaming Lips will come again.